Hello and welcome to another Lawyer Up How to Play video. In this video, I'm going to cover primarily three things. I'm going to cover how to set up case number 5, the Casino Heist. I'm going to cover how to play that case and how it differs and go over some of the rules and play like a round or two. And I'm also going to talk about the overruled objection variant. So that's why I have these two cards out here and how those objections work if you're playing with that particular variant. Or promo card. So with that, let's start getting set up. So to start, you're going to take out all the case number 5 cards. You'll give the base decks to each player. We'll have the defense over here and the prosecution here. So you're going to want to give the components to each of those characters, to each person. And then for the overruled objections, if you're playing with those, there's a blue and a red card. You're going to give those to each player accordingly. And the dice, since you'll need to roll for those objections, you'll need those. Then we have all the bias tokens left over and the defendant cards. But one of the first things you'll want to do, or I find it easy to do, is when you take all of the case number 5 cards out, you're going to want to separate them out. So we have these special procedures here, and since we haven't done this in a video yet, we'll play with these as well. So you'll give those to the defense and prosecution. They'll start out in play in the prosecution, in the procedure area. You're going to take all the evidence cards and case cards marked with a case number 5 that aren't witnesses. They're all going to have the same back. I'm going to take all those and shuffle them and sort of set them in the middle for now. We have the judge, which we can use. We'll put the judge here for now. And then we have all the defendants with a redder back, all your witnesses. You want to take your witnesses, set them up as a deck. The Casino Heist info card, you don't really need that. You can set that off to the side. There's no strategy cards in this set, so the cards that you'll be left with are the con cards, which have this gray back and have a shifty guy making a deal on the side, grifting and conning it up. So the first thing you want to do is sort of divide everything up. So now I've taken all of the defense and prosecution components that they each have for each player. I've sort of set those off camera for now, so you can just see the setup of case number 5 and the components for that case more directly. So the first thing you want to do is select the defendants for the case. You need to have a mastermind, so you're always going to have the mastermind out, and we'll just sort of flip this up. And we've got Kelby, so he'll be our mastermind. And then you get 4 other random defendants. So I'm just going to shuffle these up. And then what we'll do is we'll randomly choose 2 from the top that we'll keep face up, and we'll choose 2 from the bottom and flip them. The rest of those defendants will not be needed. They can be set off to the side or put back in the box. So here are the 5 people we think are part of the crew for the Casino Heist. Sorry, I didn't realize I set the first one off camera a little bit, so I'll move this in a little bit. All right, so we've got the mastermind, and then we have the 4 other defendants. From your bias tokens, you can set aside the discredit tokens and use them if you play the discredit card. You'll take the rest of the bias tokens, all 12 of them, and you'll shake them up, and you'll randomly put a token on the bottom step, it's a gray space, of each defendant. And you're going to randomly assign these, and 2 of them won't be used because there's only going to be 10 spaces. So these other 2, I would set off near the thing, near the defendants, because there are a couple card effects that let you swap bias icons. So we have our judge over here. We'll keep him down here. And then we have, you're going to want to take your witness deck, shuffle that up. I like to set it above the judge, but you're going to set it off to the other side. and you're going to draw 5 witnesses to be the starting lineup. Move everything down because we're going to go off camera. We don't want that. 5. Same thing with the con deck. Con deck's pretty easy. You're just going to shuffle it and set it next to the judge or somewhere you've got space off to the side. The play area, the main play area. Then you're going to take the 60 evidence cards from case number 5, shuffle this deck together, and one of the things that makes this case different than the others is, or any of the other cases in Lawyer Up, is that discovery, in a normal game of Lawyer Up, discovery happens before the trial phase of the game. But in this case, discovery happens dynamically each round before you call a witness. So you're going to want to shuffle up these discovery cards. Oops, I dropped one. And you need to have a buried evidence to start the game. So you're going to shuffle them and then draw the top 9 cards. And that's going to be your buried evidence. The rest of this deck is going to need to be placed nearby to draw from each round of the game. So we'll put that here to start. And now, unlike a normal game of Lawyer Up, we're now pretty much ready to play. Again, the discovery phase doesn't happen in this particular game. So each player will shuffle their base decks. And since we're playing, my base deck's right off screen, but I'll put my procedure up here. And the other thing I'm going to put up here and try to fit on screen is my overruled objections and my tokens. And then we just won't put, the defense will keep off screen, so we make sure we have enough space. But I have shuffled their deck. We can put this on screen, potentially. And I do like to have the bias counters nearby. So now we're set up for a case. When setup's finished, it'll look like this for case number 5. The thing that case number 5 does, just to go over some of the rules that make the game differently, is number 1, you'll notice, of course, that we put out these defendants and we do not have a jury. So the way swaying works in this is you only sway in one direction, which is up these tracks. If someone gets the top track, they will win that particular witness and lock them out and resolve that case. There's also a spot with a gavel on it. You must get, to decide that case, one player must have their token at that spot or above to resolve which way that case goes at the end. You know, if players are only up a little bit up the track, that case is indeterminate and neither person would score that defendant. Because the goal in this case is to win the most cases of these 5 cases. So each of these members of the heist team is being tried. And as the prosecution, which I'm playing as, I'm hoping to convict at least 3 of them. And as the defense, you're trying to get off the majority of them, you know, prove that they're innocent. So the next thing, as I mentioned earlier, that's different about case number 5 is that the other thing that's different about case number 5 is that the order of operations is a little bit different because we have these con cards that will come into play and the discovery phase, which happens every round. So instead of drawing 5 cards from your base deck, like you do in a normal game, the final step of setup is drawing 3 cards. And obviously we know that these 3 cards will be procedures and arguments only. We're not going to get any evidence in here. So after each player draws their 3 cards and has their starting hand, the next step of Heist number 5, we have the normal step, which is the prosecution starts with the judge's favor, and will choose a witness to call from the lineup. And what you want to do strategically is you do want to focus on getting any witnesses. You want to win witnesses that are up here as defendants in the trial. So they'll all be marked as suspects because depending on the way these cards flip, they could be a defendant. And these suspect cards act as keys to get into these lock spaces to win those particular cases. So calling Barry and winning Barry would be very advantageous for me. So I'm going to start with drawing Barry. And these characters in this case typically do not have called effects. They have discovery effects instead. And the reason they have discovery effects, here we'll do all this so we can track things. So I will start with 2 influence and the opponent gets 1. So I'm slightly winning, but not a big deal. So after the witness is called, they all have discovery effects instead. And the reason they have that is because we'll do discovery during this witness instead of in between. But after you call the witness, the next thing you do is both players draw the top card of the con deck. So I'll show you what a con looks like. These give you a condition that you want to meet during the course of this particular round, this particular witness. So I drew insurance fraud, and my setup is I want to have the most cards in my examination. So I want to make sure I'm playing cards to my examination. Sorry, I'm just rearranging my tokens a little bit. So that's the con I have to worry about. I like to keep it in my hand, so I'm constantly looking at it and taking it into account. But you could play it face down on your side, you know. But I personally like to hold it. I like to hold it to remind myself because it doesn't affect me, but you can place it down next to the witness as instructed in the rule book as well. So now that, and then likewise, the defense would draw their con, and they would place it down like on this side, for example. Or maybe they keep it in their hand as well, which we'll do, just to keep things clear in here. Okay, so now that we've finished the con phase of calling a witness, or sort of the step of each round in the Casino Heist case, the next step is the discovery phase, which is where we will each draw 3 cards normally and pick 1 to go to our hand, 1 to put in our opponent's hand, and 1 to bury. And add to the buried evidence. Now, Barry has a discovery effect, which is each player drafts 4 cards and gives 2 to their opponent this round during discovery. So instead of drawing 3, we'll each draw 4, and then we do our normal drafting where, I have my hand of cards, and here are the cards I can look at to draft with. And one of the interesting things about this case is a lot of the evidence is neutral, so it can be beneficial to both sides. So I'll take this wire transfer because it's worth 3 to me. And then I'm going to bury the security incidents report, and I'll give these 2 to my opponent's hand. Now the defense, while I'm doing that, the defense is going to do the same thing. They're going to keep a card and bury 1 and give me 2. And now each side is sort of set up and we're ready to play through the actual questioning phase of a witness, which is sort of the normal phase in a game of lawyer up. So, as always, the prosecution starts. So now I'm going to play through the questioning step of the round. And the other difference is that after the questioning phase, before we resolve the witness, we will check our cons that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to play through this round to hopefully give you a good understanding of how this case works. I'll try to talk through my reasoning, and I will make sure to at least try to object at least once. So here's my hand of cards. I'm going to open with this wire transfer, which will take me up to 5. It says draw 1 card from your opponent's hand. So we'll randomly take a card from their hand. So we got a piece of evidence that's very good for them. And then if it has a brain, which it doesn't, or if Kelby Winnemucca is a key witness, he is a defendant, but he's not currently a key witness, they would draw 1 card from my hand, but that's not the case. So I steal one of their powerful cards. Let's say the defense plays the usual suspects to give themselves 2, but the reason they're really playing it is for this effect, which is shuffle all cards in the lineup back into the witness deck, then deal 5 new witnesses and claim 1 suspect with the suspect keyword. Now that's important because they could get the key to finish off one of these cases. So put this down and we'll draw 5 new ones. Of course, some of them are upside down. 3, 4, 5. And they can claim a suspect. Unfortunately, neither of these is particularly great for them because they don't have this. So we'll just say they take Denise. Then it would come back to me. I should mention too that if each player is playing their con face down, like the rules say, you are always allowed to check your con and remember what it is. So again, my con is to have the most cards in my examination. So I'm just trying to play cards until they run out. That's why I played this first one, because it took a card away from them. Hopefully give me an edge. I'm going to play key evidence next, which I like to use the dice to mark the value of the card. The previous card in my thing was evidence, so key evidence is going to be worth 5. Which takes me to 10. Next, they're going to play marked chips for 2. But when you play with marked chips, you need both dice, and it says, roll the dice. For each 6 result, draw 1 card from the case deck. No 6s. I'm going to try to use my overruled objections, but I realized you don't even need the other 2 tokens when you're playing this way. You move this token up. I normally wouldn't do this on my turn, but I'm going to play this card, which, because it's blue, is worth 0 to me, but the effect is discard a card to draw 3 cards from my opponent's deck. And if you remember my con, I want to have the most cards in the examination when this is over. So the defense is going to play Mwangi's evidence for just 1. And this card reads, you may discard 1 card to shuffle the top 2 cards of the case deck into your deck and then draw 1 card. If Barry is a key witness, which he is, you may do this a second time. So he's going to do that I think they only want to do it once. So they'll discard 1, they take 2 cards from the case deck, shuffle that into their main deck. And then they draw a card. It's my turn, and I drew a lot of these blue cards from the blue deck. So in order to have the most cards in my examination, I'm going to play that as a wild. Now, the defense is going to play key evidence as well, since they have a previous evidence, which would make this 5 points, which would give them the lead. So I'm going to use my objection here. So I have to meet or exceed a 2. or my objection fails. So it succeeds, and I now have a sustained objection, this witness, so I can't object to the defense's next card, which is going to be an evidential argument for 6. So they set me up. And they've taken the lead. But I can't object to that because I did get a sustained objection. If I had failed that and that card had stayed in, I could then try again. And whether or not I had won that or not, I have to progress my token. And I'm sorry, that first space is 1, so I would have only had to roll a 1 or better, not a 2. Now I would have to roll a 2 or better. I'm going to make an impassioned plea for 3. And then to keep things interesting, let's say that the defense uses their objection. They roll. And I guess this first roll is sort of automatic because it's a meet or exceed. So your first objection's free. Because even if you roll a 1, you meet or exceed, but future objections will now be at the risk of a die roll. So you'll likely get 3, and you can get more potentially if you're objecting a lot, but it's not guaranteed. The defense is out of cards. So let's say that they sidebar to keep things going. And it would go back to the prosecution. I played this for 0. Again, this is to meet my con of having the most cards in my examination. So it does nothing for me, and I can't do the effect. It's give your opponent one of your claimed witnesses and claim one of their claimed witnesses, because I don't have one. But I want to play it down for potential most cards in the pile. The card the defense drew does not work. So in order for example purposes, instead of passing, let's say that the defense triggers the plea bargain special procedure, which is discard one of their claimed witnesses. So they claimed Denise, which doesn't really help them in the grand scheme of things. And that lets them reveal their current con and trigger its success effect, which is your opponent cannot sway more than one bias by spending influence this round. So it says to discard the con. I'm going to keep it in play just because we know it's been successfully triggered. This is one where it's about swaying bias, so I don't want to forget that I can only sway. I can only sway one bias this whole round. Whereas other effects may be more immediate, and I could have triggered it, done the effect, and put it away. I just don't want to forget to do that. So that was their turn. I have the judge's favor back for me. And just to make sure I win, I'm going to sidebar. The defense has to pass. They can't play their card, and they have nothing else they can do. So as my final action, I'm going to play Media Circus for 4 to get me up to 17. And then I would reveal my hand for the rest of the round. Not that it matters. They've already passed. I've taken my 1 examination action, so we're done. I guess before that examination action, I would have played these two procedures down. But now we go to resolving the witness. And when you resolve the witness in case 5, you reveal both cons before you figure out who wins the witness. So have the most cards in the examination. I did succeed in that. So I get +1 influence for each card in my procedure. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 cards. So I'm going to go up 7 more, which would be a huge surprise to the opponent, but luckily for them, they triggered this other con, and they actually met this setup too, which is have the least total value. This is like you're trying to, the Soze is you're trying to lose this witness. So they have, but they also triggered it from the plea bargain anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So we'll finish resolving the witness. We've done that. Now we would resolve the witness as normal and trigger any victory effects we want. This is plus, discard your hand, +2 for each card you discard. I only had 1 card in my hand at the time, so I'll discard that. I get 2 more. And then I have a victory effect here, which is your opponent sways 1 bias. So they're going to get, the defense is going to get to sway something, and they'll take something expensive like this and take this 4. This is the amount of influence you pay to sway. They'll sway up Quinn Harper because they can. So I can sway any bias I want because I have 12 influence, but unfortunately that means I'm going to waste a lot of it. But what I could do is I could spend, I'm only going to sway 1 bias, but I could move it up several times, I guess. I just can't spread it out. So I have 14. I can't move, I don't have any, I've claimed this witness. So I can only sway 1 bias, which I'm going to take as I can only move it once. So I do have Barry's thing, but it seems wasteful to just spend 2 to move it up 1 space. So I'm going to spend 4. I have more than enough to move that up once. And unfortunately, because of the con, I can't spend any of the extra juice I have. But I did claim this witness, and if I were able to move up Barry along the thing, I could claim him. So after that, we can discard all these cards. We can discard the cons. They're out of the game. So the last thing we'll do as part of resolving the witness is you want to make sure you fill in any missing spots in the lineup. And we'll want to refresh the defense's sidebar and give them the judge's favor. And then the final thing we do is you draw back up to 3 cards. So the defense is going to call Satyana Chopra. So we each draw a con. I've drawn false warrants, have the most arguments in a row in your examination. That means consecutively on top of one another. Now we do discovery. I'll take this big one, 5. I'll give my opponent this one. And I'll bury the faulty alarm system. Defense is going to bury that one. And then Satyana says, which is interesting, it's why I picked her, after drafting, you may swap this witness with any claimed witness. So they're going to opt to bring back Barry since he's one of the actual defendants. And that means I start at 0. And the defense starts at 2. They're going to start with this for 3 because they have a bad hand. So they're up to 5. And it says each player may discard 1 evidence, enter this hot pursuit, to draw 1 evidence from their discard. I'm going to play Vault Blueprints for 5. The opponent draws 1 evidence at random from the buried evidence. They're going to play Marked Accounts, which is your opponent may draw 1 card. If they do, or if Shasheen Hawkins is a key witness, which she is, sway 1 bias. So I may as well draw a card because Shasheen's a key witness, which is going to let them sway a bias. And they'll take this 3. I'm going to play Clear Evidence for 3, which says play 1 evidence from your hand ignoring bias, which is going to let me play Wire Transfer for 3. Brings me up to 11. Wire Transfer 1, draw 1 card from your opponent's hand. It has the mine symbol. So they draw 1 card back from my hand. And it's their turn. They're going to play Usual Suspects again, which is the card they got from their discard pile, because that is shuffle all the witnesses back into the deck. And draw 5 more. And they can take any suspect, and they have quite a few choices. Since they're winning on Kane and Connors, they're going to take Kane and Connors. I'm going to address the jury. Sway 1 bias. I'm going to go up Barry. I think the defense plays no further questions. For 4, and then immediately takes the pass action. I'm going to play Armed and Dangerous to win, at least for now. Each player claims the top card of the witness deck. Take the first one. Each player who claims a criminal discards one of their other claimed witnesses. So I drew an accomplice suspect, so I'm okay. The defense drew a criminal informant, which means they have to discard Kane and Connors, who's a criminal suspect. So that's good because they can't outright win that anymore. And then we'll tally it up. I win. My victory effect is first we have to reveal these cons. Have the least evidence in your examination. For the defense, they had 1, 2, 3. Which is not the least, I only had 2. So failure, your opponent refreshes one of their objections, which just means in overruled objections, refresh, you just retreat this. And then mine, which I don't believe I hit either, was have the most arguments in a row in your examination. And I only have 1 ever in a row. And they also have 1. So I don't have the most, I have the tied. So my failure is your opponent claims the top card of the witness deck. So they're going to get Spence. And now I get to sway the muscle. And then I get to discard my hand. I have 1 card. For each card discarded, I get 2 more. So it takes me up to 18. So I have 4 influence to sway. I'm going to spend 4 here. Because now if I have 1 left, I can claim and win Quinn. If I had had 5, I could have done this and spent her to get to that stop spot, and then I would have claimed this particular, I would have convicted Quinn, which is one of the victory effects. So hopefully that run through of a couple rounds gives you a good idea of how case number 5 plays. I don't want to add a whole run through for this one, just because there's a lot of editing that goes into this, and I'd like to do another video that covers case number 6 later this afternoon as well. So I'm going to sign off here. If you have any other questions, please let us know in the comments, or of course you can message on Board Game Geek. We have a thread set up for any FAQs and errata. So hit us up there as well. One last thing I did want to mention about case number 5 is ending the case. So the game ends in 5 and you proceed to closing statements when all of these defendants have been claimed. That usually doesn't happen. So if the lineup cannot be filled with 5 witnesses at the end, you can see we've claimed a lot of cards out of there. So there's sort of a varying number of rounds in this case. So if we ever go to draw before calling witnesses and can't put out 5 in the lineup, that also will trigger the end game. And if either player runs out of cards and can't draw up to 3 cards before the next round, at the end. So if I were to draw 3 cards and only had 2 left in my deck, that also means we're immediately proceed to closing statements. So just make sure you're always checking the end game conditions for each case, because this one, again, basically if you run out of any cards in any deck, the case ends, or if all of these are claimed. This usually does not happen. It's quite hard to claim them. Typically, you may win 2-2 or something. The defense just needs to tie. So if the defense claimed 2 witnesses and I claim 2, I lose as the prosecution. Defense always wins ties since they go second and since they're the defense. It's usually sort of how our court system works. So just wanted to mention how the game ends, but otherwise I think I've gotten you a lot of rules about case number 5, shown you a few examples, and then also talked about how overruled objections work. Just to touch on that one more time, if I had objected more and say I was on this spot for a 4, and I objected again and rolled a 6, I would succeed. But if I rolled, come on, I gotta roll bad. If I rolled a 3, that objection would fail. You would still push it up. You still push it up because objecting, the judge finds it annoying. So every time you object, you do push it up. Whether or not your objection is successful or not is what matters, since you only get 1 sustained objection per round. Okay, that's really it for now. Thanks for watching and have a great day.